Yes. Welcome to the. Do you have a Glizzy hat on?
Yo, hey, this is hard to obtain. This Glizzy hat, right? This is courtesy of the Texas Rangers. You see that? It's for an upcoming Glizzy night on April 30th at Texas Rangers Stadium. Yes. To answer your question, it does say Glizzy on my hat.
I was full on had a whole thing that I was going to do, and I
I
looked at
threw
the
you.
screen, and I couldn't make it out at first. That's why I was like, yeah, and I looked back again, but it
And it's just
says
a
Glizzy.
big old Glizzy on your screen, right?
Okay,
So I
all
was
right.
thinking about a topic for this episode, and
Oh boy.
now it's kind of gone a little bit different direction, but is doing too much. Maybe we'll revisit that.
Yeah, I
But
don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if we want to go down that road.
Wow. All right, let's do the intro. Welcome, people, to the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade, and we've got a great episode packed for you today. If you're watching this, you'll see what we've been talking about.
Yep.
Eric is wearing a hat that literally says the word Glizzy, and it doesn't just say Glizzy. It's like in a fancy font with
It's like that old school
it's
baseball.
shiny. Yeah, it's like, is it shiny? Is there
No,
reflect?
it's like
I don't.
puffy,
It's just like
kind of.
embroidered white.
Yeah.
It is
Just
dimensional,
embroidered
but
white, and it
yeah,
says Glizzy. All right. Well,
yeah. Look, see,
um,
if you rub it like that, just okay. Never mind. Go ahead.
This is the
rubbing-
first time in our show's history that Jacques just appreciates that I'm still wearing a Giants hat.
yes, absolutely, 100%. Anyway, welcome to the show, everybody. Watch this on YouTube just so you can see what we're talking about. You know that I'm not crazy for messing up the intro. I'm a professional here, people.
Absolutely.
Professionalism only goes so far. This is the show about cars, and it's also about kicks, and we've got a good mix of those things today. Got a couple of things that we've been wanting to talk about that really affect both sides, both the collectors of both of those things, because times are a changing, as the old folks likes to say. But as you guys know, this podcast would not be what it is without the other two gentlemen on this podcast. I'm just here to talk about sneakers and to be amazed by Glizzy hats. So, Eric, go ahead and introduce yourself so people know what's going on here.
Yeah, I guess I'm the resident Glizzy guy now. No, I am the car guy here on the Cars and Kicks podcast show. This took a whole other direction. I bring car knowledge to the space here and there. Jacques definitely knows more than I do. He plays very well, the kind of
Very coy.
everyday.
Very coy. I'm very demure about my car knowledge.
Exactly. But no, then we've got the most important of the three of us, Nick over here, who kind of holds it all together and knows as much as Jacques and I combined and then some.
Yeah, I try to, but more importantly, I'm just here to make sure we stay on track with all this stuff and not talk about Glizzies for an entire episode. So
Yeah.
I'll just toss it back to Jacques and let him introduce. I don't know if you want to go news topics first or even just.
It's kind of news. So I've been thinking about this a lot. So for those that are in the sneaker world, and I imagine this equates to the car world as well, Nike is in the process of bringing back a lot of retro sneakers. And one of the biggest retro sneakers that they're bringing back is the Undefeated 4s. Now, there's a lot of conversation going on about this because there is a segment of the community that feels like these shoes shouldn't be remade. But then there's another part of the community that's like, why won't you remake them so other people can actually get them? Now, a little backstory, the Undefeated 4s have been like mythical in the sneaker world. They've resold for some have resold for like $20, $30, $40,000, I think.
Yeah.
And it's just a really highly coveted shoe that not a lot of people have been able to get their hands on. And so I was thinking about this, and in reference to this podcast with cars, how does the car community reflect on that? Because I feel like it's a little more that it's done a little more in the car world. Would that be accurate, that they bring stuff back more than they do are very similar to the sneaker world? Is that am I wrong about that?
You're not wrong, but it's different. It's more they bring back nameplates, for example. You know, like I
Mm.
don't know. A good example would maybe be the Blazer, and that's relevant because here recently they just dropped the whole Devin Booker collab. Nike did
Yes.
with the Blazer and the vintage Blazers and everything like that. The Blazer nameplate has kind of come and gone throughout the years, and it used to be something super cool, in my opinion, that now has evolved into something less cool. So it's not like they just brought back a retro version of the Blazer that's been modernized. I know we've talked about that concept on the show before of how cool it would be to have just a modern version of something retro. But in that regard, yes, they will bring back nameplates or models, for lack of a better term, after they've kind of gone away for a while. The NSX was another one of those, but completely different car. And to kind of tie in what you're talking about here is it's an interesting thing, and I imagine it's the same in the sneaker space. You're talking about how these undefeated fours were supposed to be released and then never released again, and that's what brought the intrinsic value to them, etc. Now they're going to be re-released. Does that devalue them? Blah blah blah. It's a long conversation that we could go into on a very long episode, but just to keep it short, for the car side of things, when they went from like the original NSX to then the revised NSX that was a hybrid and didn't have the kind of purity that the original one did, people didn't respond super well to it. And
Mm.
so it's different in that regard, but I wonder in terms of how people respond to it, it's probably similar. Like now, does the Undefeated Four, is it any less special now that it's being re-released, so to speak?
I mean, yes and no, right? The re-release of it will never be the original, right? Like if you were there for that era, if you somehow got a pair of that, they were super limited. There'll always be like this kind of like pinnacle shoe in the story hierarchy, right? But
Mhm.
I think that this kind of makes it seem like more accessible. Like Jacques and I are very vocal and have been for years about wearing your sneakers, and
Yep.
like that is a part of, like, I'm guilty because I do collect sneakers, but I started collecting sneakers so far but before all of this became so massive and that sneakers were just reproduced. And like it's a completely different era. I came into sneakers from like the like collectibles and trading card mentality almost, even though there's a lot of crossover there. The distinguishing factor in a lot of that is like you're always going to take care of those shoes, and eventually they deteriorate and fall apart and go away, like trading cards, vinyl toys, that kind of stuff, which I also have collected for years. Those things don't go away. Once you have them, you can look at them all day long, and they don't really, there's no wear and tear on them. Same thing with cars. But I think the like this drives me into the question I was going to ask earlier. Like, this kind of stuff almost makes it harder for people for the next generation to come in. So like, are we killing off the hobby by forcing people to revisit the hobby's, let's say, high moments or high points, or collectible moments or hype
Mm.
moments? Are we killing off the hobbies for the sake of sales for the brands? Because we're also potentially, like Jacques was saying, you're pushing some of those diehard collectors who would only want the original undefeated fours to sit on the shelf. Like, they're not going to be as interested in the hobby either. So I'm wondering, like, if this is, a bigger kind of mental mistake for brands, thinking that, hey, we can just revisit this thing. Because like sometimes there's nostalgia, everything is cyclical, but are we really just killing off the hobby by introducing old stuff repackaged in a new way?
Yeah. So I mean, I think we know that this, like, we always try to empathize with the brand and maybe like, oh, the brand, like they're part of this community when they're not. They're selling to this community. They're not necessarily a part of this community. So I think to a lot of us, this feels like a cash grab from Nike. Like, oh, they know these are going to sell. Let's just put these out, make a little bit of money, as opposed to the more the approach that some of us wonder, like, oh, they're just looking out for the new collector that never had a chance to get these. I'm not sure that Nike has that in their heart. Or like the line sheets and the business goals don't necessarily align with them going, hey, we want to give these to the people, get these to the people that didn't get a pair, kind of thing. That doesn't fall right for me. So I feel like
Yeah.
this is a bit of a cash grab, and in that sense, I think that's probably why most of the collectors are angry. But at the same time, I'm a person who never had undefeated fours.
Yeah.
I never could afford them, and like I wasn't collecting enough during that time to be a part of that conversation or be a friend of the friend of a friend kind of thing to get a pair. So to me, it's like, oh, it would be cool to have them, but also like, do I want this pair or do I want the originals? Like it's almost like I imagine it's like the new Broncos. Like the new Broncos look great, but are they like the Bronco that everybody remembers? Is that the same? I don't know. I don't
See,
know.
kind of a multifold answer to the question. I think there is some harm in kind of recycling things, so to speak. I understand things are cyclical. All the stuff the kids are starting to wear in high school now is the stuff I wore in high school. Like that's just inevitable. It does happen. So I understand the companies like Nike, et cetera, revisiting things from the past that might be hype again. Something as exclusive as that, does it need to remain, a one and done type of situation or not? That's a bigger conversation. I think when you do start watering down things, so to speak, by re-releasing stuff, it's interesting because on one hand, it can then expose the kids that are now in this space that weren't even old enough to know what sneakers were when it was first released, and get them hyped about it. And it could bring people into the space, into our worlds that we love, the sneaker world and everything like that. But is it at what cost, right? Like, are you alienating the purists, so to speak, to the point
Yeah.
where they don't want to be
Yes.
part of it anymore? And that I think there are ways of approaching this, right? And I'm not an expert on anything, really, but when it comes to cars, I do think there's a really great example that just got announced. I don't know when, it was probably a week or two ago at this point, but the Mercedes Benz G Wagon. Did you guys see this announcement for it? They're calling it like the stronger than the 80s or stronger than the 1980s edition.
Mm.
So this ties into everything that we've been talking about almost perfectly. So it is based on a new G-Wagon. But if you look at it, the G-Wagon has evolved over time, but it's kind of like the 911. It really, you look at a G-Wagon from the 80s or from the 2025, it's a G-Wagon right away. So it has evolved a bit. Well, this new edition that they're kind of launching is it looks very retro. It has wheels from the original version, not the original, but from the 80s. Color palette is very similar. Interior, color palette and everything is similar. But here's what they're doing to kind of not just make it like a re-release, so to speak. Obviously, you get all the performance and technology and safety features of a brand new G-Wagon that looks old, which is kind of what we've been saying car companies should be doing anyway. But they
Yeah.
are limiting this to 460 units. That is because the original chassis was dubbed the W460. Mercedes has different, all manufacturers have different chassis. If it's Mercedes, you've got the W210 was the old E-Class, and then the 211, et cetera. And this was the W460 was the chassis code for the G-Wagon back in the 80s. So they're releasing 460 of these limited edition 2025, or maybe it's a 2026, I don't remember, G550 base thing. To me, that is how you do it. That's how you bring back something retro, make it cool, make your audience remember what was cool back in the day without just relaunching and recycling the exact same thing, which is kind of what they're doing with the Undefeated 4, right? As far as I know, nothing's changing. Materials, yeah, they maybe have evolved, but they're still using the same materials, same color palette. Nothing is changing on the re-release, is it?
It's pretty close. I mean, I think now that you've said that, like, this is why this show is so great, because taking the car perspective of this and thinking about it versus the sneaker perspective, right? Like Jacques and I, if we have this conversation without thinking about cars, we're talking about, Undefeated Fours are back. We don't really think about it being a tribute to the originals. We think of it as Nike trying to sell us a replacement. which, this might be a shoe that gets people like us to buy into, yeah, I would love to have that pair, maybe, I don't know. But thinking about the way cars do it, right? Like, Porsche's great at this, like you said, Mercedes is great at this. Like even the Ford Bronco, like the Blazer's kind of the oddball in the top of the cars that we've talked about. But like all of these like retro inspired cars are paying tribute to the legacy and bringing it into a modern era. And I think that's an interesting kind of weird place that cars and kicks differ in a lot of ways. I watched a video. I watched MKBHD's autofocus video on the Charger EV recently, and that car is another one of those weird anomalies of the car world where it's like you're trying to bring muscle car into electric vehicle
era.
Yeah, and props for trying. Like, is it going to work? I don't know. Like, my assumption is that no.
As of right now, you can lease one of those. I saw an ad the other day. You can lease one for like $299 a month. They're giving them away because they can't move them.
Yeah, and that's a whole topic for another episode of just the car industry and both these industries, right? Like, we're in this place of like, what's next, right? We've filled the buckets of so many people with consumerism. Like, what's gonna bubble over and like actually be successful now that we have, like an economy that's slowing, money that's going away from most consumers, and yet, like all these cool air quotes here for people just listening, all these cool things happening that are, trying to get us to buy and consume these goods that we've, become so nostalgic for over the years.
Well, see, here's where I wish that it wouldn't just be an air quotes cool thing, right? I think, and I go back to the Mercedes, the G-Wagon thing I'm just talking about a second ago, because I think that is something that a lot of people could take note of, right? Like, the reason they're doing this, it's always, we had Aaron Cooper on here recently, and he talked about this, and then he posted about it on Sneaker Sunday about the why. Right? The why behind the design, the why behind this. It's the why drives everything, in my opinion. So in this case, it's like, why release a special edition G-Wagon? In this case, it's to honor the 500,000th unit being built. They've done 500,000 of these vehicles over the years, right? And so let's do a special version, and let's make 460 of them, 460 of them, because that was the chassis. Could like find these little anecdotal bits that make it interesting instead of just re-releasing something. And I feel like the sneaker space doesn't. That's a bit of a miss in that regard. They don't really. Yeah. They just re-release something to re-release something. There never seems to be some sort of anniversary or a milestone or something tied to the why behind it being re-released.
So I have to push back on that a little bit.
Let's hear it.
Because it is an anniversary. It's 20 years.
Okay.
But the problem is the marketing dollars don't go towards telling those stories, which is the missing piece for so many sneaker releases.
There you go.
In the last decade, in my opinion. But that's just how I look at it. Because there's a ton of great things happening right now in sneakers that are pegged to an anniversary of some sort or an event of some sort. But like the average consumer does not know that, because the diehard consumers like myself or us or whatever are so tapped into the information cycle from so many different places that it's just like it just blows past us in the news cycle, and we don't talk about it, so it doesn't reach the mainstream consumers, in my opinion. But I don't know, what do you think, Jacques?
No, I mean, I guess this is making me think about sneakers in an entirely different way, because if it's the same thing, there's still that like argument between the two sides of like, oh, I don't want it to release. I do want it released because I never had a chance to get it. Maybe I was too young. Maybe I didn't have the money at the time. So it's cool that it's coming back out. But then there's the people that have it, or even some that don't have it and are just like, look, this is what was he looking for? Indiana Jones looking for in the Raiders of the Lost Ark. This is the
the skull thing.
Yeah, why can't I remember what it's called?
I can't think of what it. But anyway, so they like looking for that, and like this is that. Like there's only one or like of these things, or so many of these things. Why not? Why go after them? But then I think when brands try to do what they do in the automotive world, where they go, you know what, we're going to release a Jordan, let's just say a Jordan 1, but it's based off of this. Sometimes they're not received as well. Like certain things
Mm-hmm.
are, certain ones are, but if they change the shoe in any way, then it's really they're like, no, 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 no. Like
I hear
I
you.
want the original. It has to definitely be the original. But I think the car community is a little more accepting of almost like that nameplate style of something being updated and coming back. Like
Yeah.
the sticker
Yeah.
community doesn't want a new Air Force One. Like they're not gonna deal with an updated Air Force One. They're not gonna deal with an updated Jordan One. They're gonna be like, no, we want the Jordan One. They don't even want Jordan One mids or Air Force highs. Like it's
And
it's
even
weird.
and even a step beyond that, like when a story is done really, really well, A Star Is Born Jordan 1s. It was based off the cover of Sports Illustrated. It was a colorway that like tied into that specific cover, the anniversary, all those things were there for it, and then nobody cared about that shoe. And it's a nice shoe. It like the quality is great, but the story didn't align with like maybe the collector or sneakerhead world enough, so it just kind of flopped in a lot of ways.
Yeah, but then you tell them, oh, this one's dead are inspired by a game where he played where he broke a backboard and he had on an orange jersey,
Right.
and it goes crazy. Like
Yeah.
you just never know in the sneaker world what's going to hit and what's not going to hit. But
Well, let me
yeah, it
ask you
was
this.
interesting.
Just to kind of go back to what we talked about at the beginning of is this killing off the future, of these worlds? Are car people and sneaker people going to cease to exist in the next generation? Do they even care anymore? And I wonder, like, maybe there's some truth to that. Maybe we're trying too hard to do the retro thing, and it's not resonating because these kids didn't grow up in a world where Michael Jordan played basketball. They didn't grow up in a world where, cars from the 80s and 90s ruled the streets. They don't know anything about that. So are these companies spending tons of time and billions of dollars on a lost cause? Should they just really be hyper focused on, blank slating it all and starting from scratch? I know there's inherent risk to that, but what is the answer? I'm not saying I have it, but what is the answer to that? Because to me, it also, ties into a bit of my world, so to speak. Every movie, every television show, it seems like the stuff getting greenlit these days is all being recycled from something that did well in the past because nobody wants to take the risk. However, when you are bold enough to take a risk, look at Sinners. Sinners is crushing it in theaters. It is completely original, crazy story that, on paper, if you pitch that probably even 5 years ago, might not have been greenlit. But when you put the talent behind it creatively, not only in cast, but in, director and everything like that, you create something that, obviously the pitch was good enough for it to get greenlit. And now it's probably going to change the way that kind of the purpose of the studio in the movie industry and the way deals are done and everything, because somebody was willing to take the risk and do something completely original. So the case can be made for that too. Like, why don't we just clean slate it and go with something completely original?
So I think that's part of the conversation. Like the the culture usually determines the cool factor. Nobody cared about undefeated fours outside of sneaker culture
Sure.
in that
Right.
moment in 2005. Your example earlier, Eric, is perfect too. The NSX, when the NSX came out in 1990, it was mind blowing because it was everything I loved about Hondas in a supercar.
Yeah.
The NSX that came out in 2017 or whatever it was. I didn't live here in Monterey, but I came to Monterey to see it unveiled at Car Week that year because Acura had a big setup for it. And like, it's flipping beautiful. Like, that car is gorgeous, but yes, it's a hybrid, and it's also half Audi R8. Like, it's not pure Honda going after their North Star. So for me, even as a Honda fan, like, the car is like, it's cool, it's beautiful. And don't get me wrong, if Honda, Acura, if you're listening and you have extras sitting around and you're not selling them, send them my way. Address will be in the details or whatever. But like, I think that's the thing, that we can't recreate those cultural moments. your Sinners example is perfect
Yeah.
too, right? This is a turning point in everything that we're going to see moving forward. And I think, arguably the Undefeated fours were a part of that turning point in sneaker culture in 2005. They're not really going to be the same. Like, they might be fun for, however many they make, 20,000 people or something. But like, they're not going to be like a cultural moment where people are like, man, remember when those came out the second time? And that can't exist in sneakers. It can exist with cars, and it can exist in film, in my opinion, because there's been plenty of examples where a movie, and music too, like Cam and I were actually just talking about this because something came on that was sampled, from like the 70s. And I listened to a lot of that, like 60s and 70s. I listened to a lot of the stuff that was sampled in hip hop in
when
the
it was
80s and
original.
90s. Yeah. So like,
Right.
I love the Eddie Kendricks type stuff, and that era of just like soulful music. That is what like drives me. But most people don't know those beats and those hooks and that sound came from a completely different time, because we have a different scroll pattern now that just didn't exist before. So it's really interesting to think about all of these things as these cultural momentum shifters,
Yeah, and I imagine. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. Like what's your perspective on it? Me being the new guy in this group when it comes to cars, me seeing someone create their own Porsche
Porsche.
with but
You
electrifying it on
self-corrected
their
there. I'm
own.
impressed.
I know, I did. But like electrifying it themselves, like to me, like that's cool. Or someone like taking a Grand National and making it electric. Like to me, like that's like, oh, okay, that's dope. I love it. It has the old school nostalgia, but it's updated. But I know like real car guys that are listening to this are like, dude, you touch my Grand National, I'm gonna chop you up and put you in the trunk.
Yeah.
Which, and I get that perspective, but I guess it's all a matter of perspective of how you see it. Like it's not, and like for me, like updating it to electric is not trying to ruin the old thing. It's like bringing that old thing into today is how
Yeah.
I see it.
I guess to each their own a bit too, and it unfortunately can't happen. This is where the disconnect is between the sneaker and the car space, right? Because, just to use an example, we just picked up another toy for my wife recently. It's a SLK 55. So back in 06, 05, 06, Mercedes did a small little two-seater roadster with a 5.4 liter V8 in it. It's about the size of a Miata of that era, but it's got a 355 horsepower V8. Now, why did we pick that up? Well, because there's not very many of them. Again, I like kind of exclusive, unique cars. Thanks to German depreciation, it's very affordable nowadays. And it's also one of those things that you will never see again. You will never have a car company put a V8 in a tiny little roadster like that. So it's kind of a gone, done, bygone era type of thing. Now, I can go and find that on the used market, buy it, and relive that moment, right? You can't do that with sneakers because, to your point, Nick, they just fall apart over years. You can't put it in a garage and keep it in a climate-controlled storage and hope that you're going to be able to use it 20 years from now, because it's not going to work that way. So, you can't do that in that world, and that's where there's a big disconnect, and where I think maybe there is a place for re-releasing certain things that people weren't able to get the first time around.
So I'm gonna kind of end this episode a little bit with a question that is might be a little bit tough to hear for people.
Oof.
But as like, I asked the question of like, about the next generation, are brands killing this thing that we love for the sake of making money or whatever that looks like? But really, is it on us, the people that are a part of the culture, to bring that next generation on board and get them excited? Like, are we missing out? Are we missing the mark on what we're trying to do in order to get people excited? Maybe that's the question I should be asking.
Maybe we just need to have some youngins as guests on the show to help guide us unk group of gentlemen
the
here.
Unk
Yeah,
group.
yeah.
Yeah.
What do
We
you say?
know some
The
people.
olds.
Olds.
The
Yes.
olds. Yeah. We're part of the olds. Well, yeah. Well, thank you guys for listening. Just a quick episode today. We would love to know what you guys think about that.
Yes.
Bringing stuff back, whether it's in the car world or in the sneaker world, the undefeated fours, or if Mercedes decided to bring back the SLK 55 AMG in 2026, would the original owners be upset? Or would it be a time of joy and happiness for everyone involved? I don't know. Just asking. Just throwing that out there. Anyway, let us know. This is the Cars and Kicks podcast. I am Jacques Slade. He's Erik. He's Nick. I wouldn't be able to do this show without them because obviously they're the smarter of the group here, as you can tell just from this conversation. We want to let you guys know we appreciate you. Make sure you follow us, Nick. It's Cars and Kicks podcast. Cars X. I'm messing it up.
CarsXKicks.com. You'll find
Yes.
it. Cars X Kicks on YouTube.
Yes. Thank you guys.
Thank you all. Appreciate you.
Y'all soon.
Peace.
All right.